So this week we are going to be talking about living life creatively. So the quote that's at the beginning of the chapter from Jill Badonsky is, "The creative process is defined not only by the approach to the arts, but also how it relates to living each day with the kind of creative thought that leads to a more fulfilling lifestyle." So the main themes of this chapter, imagination and creativity, just talking about distinctions. Also these phrases of creative living and creative aging, which we make a little bit of a distinction about. This idea of soil, seeds, and sunlight, which is part of our creativity, if you like. Creative dilemmas, and then mindsets, practices, and plans, which we'll only just touch on today. So they're the main themes that are in the chapter. And just in terms of this distinction between imagination and creativity. So this is a definition for imagination: something that exists or happens only in our minds. It can be thought of as a picture of something that may or may not be real, and may be something that we have never seen or experienced before. Imagination may be considered to be where creativity begins. And so on the other hand, creativity is a process of using our imagination to bring something new into existence, such as an idea, a process, a product, something that we've got from our imagination, and we bring it into existence. And creativity stimulates the brain and adds to our cognitive health, allows us to uniquely express ourselves, to bring meaning to our lives. And this whole idea of imagination, many of you will have come across Carl Sagan. He's not with us any longer, but a wonderful astronomer and planetary scientist. Listened and watched a lot of his work over the years. And I love this quote: "Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere." Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were. And I love this picture of this child looking out of the big window at the planets, the worlds out there. So without imagination, we go nowhere. And the way we described it in the book about this whole idea of life being a work of art. And more than that, living life creatively is a work of art, always in progress, to sculpt as we wish. So we have some control over our creativity. So creative aging, creative living, a lot of good things around creative aging. I like to think about creative aging as relevant to our later life rather than maybe our midlife. But this particular picture, it called to me when I was looking for pictures. This is just, it's not my parents, but it reminds me of my parents when my father retired from the electricity company, where he worked for nearly 40 years. They took up ballroom dancing, and for, gosh, nearly 30 years, they were ballroom dancing. And I could never imagine that my father would do it, but he was really game. And they had a great time with this whole idea of enrichment of their lives. And I can't imagine what their lives would have been without ballroom dancing. So some good thinking around the latter stages of our adulthood, if you like. We chose this idea of living creatively, or creative living. And this is sort of built a little bit on Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. And she writes, "While the paths and outcomes of creative living will vary wildly from person to person, I can guarantee you this: a creative life is an amplified life. It's a bigger life, a happier life, an expanded life, and a hell of a lot more interesting life." So this is Elizabeth's book, Big Magic. And for us in Midlife, New Life, we use the phrase living life creatively to emphasize the active, creative engagement of living life consciously, with imagination, curiosity, courage, and cheer as an attitude and a way of life. So creative living. This idea of soil, seeds, and sunlight is just resonated with us as we were preparing the book. And if we imagine soil being those full and rich experiences during the first half of life, which really provide the soil for our creativity. And as we look back, we can imagine, remember those experiences. And during that time, and now, of course, seeds get planted in our imagination. All sorts of different seeds, some through our travel experiences, some through our life experiences. And those seeds get planted. And then with sunlight and with water, this is a great time to see these seeds begin to germinate. And this image, if you look at the front cover of the book, this is the image of the seedling that is growing out of the rich soil that we find ourselves in. And so soil, seeds, and sunlight, really where we are in this second half of life, ready to flourish. So mindsets and practices, we've have lots of examples of these, but the real element here is we can all be creative. I mean, I know when I was going through various stages of life, I think, well, I'm never really creative. But in fact, we can all be creative. And so developing that creative mindset is really essential. And creating the space for creativity. As I was sharing, I'm on holiday this week in the Norfolk Broads, right by the river, just a beautiful location. And I've taken the time just to be with nature and reading, contemplating, creating space for creativity. I'm not know what will come out of it, but we need to actively create that space for creativity and to fuel our imagination. There's no doubt that watching some of the birds, the swans, the herons that have a nest close by, ducks and geese, they can be used, all sorts of things can be used to fuel our imagination. And so collecting ideas, where do we collect our ideas? I make notes, I keep a word file, there's lots of ways to do that. But it's also about being courageous and really stepping out of our comfort zone, and also creating with others, that we spend time in groups, creating with others, not just in our own space. Both are important. Many of you know Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way, which is a real classic book, but she's also written It's Never Too Late to Begin Again, Discovering Creativity and Meaning at Midlife and Beyond. So fit well with our own writing. And she talks about spontaneous sparks. And where do you get them? Well, yes, we can go to workshops and seminars in person and online these days. Great meetup groups, plenty of those we can join, again, in person and online, faith-based communities, professionals offering coaching, so many places we can get these spontaneous sparks. And these conscious living conversation circles are a great forum for us if we're open to be sparked, to be triggered with some positive ideas for creativity. And in the book, we talk about creative dilemmas. And a creative dilemma is really the awareness of a gap between today's reality and a potentially better situation, along with the desire to do something about it. So identifying the gap, the dilemma then is, do I really want to do something about it or not? But being proactive. And this creative dilemma can then be the start of a creative process of exploring, discovering, and integrating. So a great way to think about creative dilemmas. And then Fred Mandel, I met Fred, gosh, it's over 10 years ago now. And he's since written this book, Becoming a Life Change Artist, along with Kathleen Jordan. And he sees these 7 creative skills, which are described in the chapter, so I won't go through them in detail today. But these are the 7 creative skills that Fred and Kathleen identified. So preparation, seeing with new eyes, fresh eyes, using context, embracing uncertainty, taking risks, collaboration with others, and a discipline to make things happen. So there's a lot more in the book about these 7 creative skills. And if you're really interested, this is a great book by Fred and Kathleen to dig more into how we build our creative skills and become a life change artist. And I love this quote. It's actually not in the book, but I wish it was. You can't use up creativity. There's the more you use, the more you have. Maya Angelou, who created this, says you can't use up creativity. I love that. We can be creative tomorrow. We can be even more creative. So really a positive aspect. Okay, so these are the reflective questions at the end of the chapter. What are the creative dilemmas that you're facing? What practices for cultivating and nurturing a creativity mindset do you want to develop? What do you need to learn to become more creative? What could you use to collect your ideas? I talked about my Word documents and my notebook. We can use a journal, sticky notes. I have my sticky notes here on holiday. Idea jars, there's so many ways, but my experience is I need to collect the ideas. Otherwise, I can remember I had a good idea yesterday, but I can't remember what it was. So I need to capture them. And then the final question for reflection: what are the benefits of living a more creative life?